Members of the Council, officers of the Council, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for His Worship, the Mayor of Nuneaton and Bedworth, Councillor Jeff Clark, JP.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Thank you, everyone. We now move on to the second extraordinary meeting of the Council, held on the 12th of January 2023. Keep forgetting the microphones are not as good as we may like. Thank everyone for their forbearance with us whilst we got through the first part of the meeting. We now move on to the second meeting. The evacuation procedures are the same. If anyone needs any assistance, please make an officer aware. But please, if the alarm does sound, go exit by one of the green exits and meet outside the bank opposite the front of the town hall. Apologies, as previously given, and we'll read them all again if I can just find the list. Screw's pinched it. Thank you. The apologies, Councillor Cooper, Downs, Javekovic, Councillor Phillips, and Councillor Tracy Shepherd. Thank you. No others at this point. Thank you. Those are accepted. Move on to declarations of interest. Obviously, members will give indication should, during the meeting, they realise that there's more declarations to declare. So we then move on to the agenda proper. Announcements. I have no formal announcements. Councillor Wilson as leader. No, thank you. So we then move on to public participation. And we have a number of questions and I think a couple of one statement. So that's that one, isn't it? Yeah, got it. So the first one is a question, statement, been submitted by Ms. Janice Batterby, submitted a statement to the council. Is Mrs. Batterby with us? Did you wish to read out your statement, Mrs. Batterby?
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to publicly congratulate the Civic Hall Action Committee on their success in establishing the Bedworth Civic Hall, CIC. This is a major milestone. I would also like to thank the several councillors who have replied to my various emails about the Civic Hall, even if I don't always like your answers. I hope that all local councillors and MPs will now recognise that our valued civic centre can have a better future and that you will work with the Action Committee and interested residents to ensure this can happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Batterby. If I'm saying that right, I hope I am. Moving on to question 2. Mr. Sam Margrave.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now the Council has approved the Civic Hall as an asset of community value. Will the Council postpone the current expression of interest process, which could see the Civic Hall privatised and taken over by a private business or developer, or even demolished, and commit to give the building to Bedworth Civic Hall Community Interest Company, which is run by local residents, community leaders, business people and those connected to the arts, and also allocate officer time to work with residents to secure funding through the Community Ownership Fund, Arts Council and others to take over the building and carry out the work needed to reopen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Markham, did you wish to respond, or did you wish to take any further questions?
Could I actually have question 3 as well? I'll respond to them both at the same time because they're virtually the same. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to question 3 as well, and you'll provide a response for both. Rachel Hardy, I believe you have a question.
Good evening. So the Civic Hall has been recognised and listed as an asset of community value under the Localism Act 2011. The Act allows community groups to bid to run a registered building or piece of land that is used to further the social well-being or interests of the local community and economy. The Act also prevents demolition plans of going ahead for at least 7 months. Demolition would cost approximately £600,000. With the council having to make a decision about financing the Civic Hall and to produce a balanced budget in a matter of months, will the council scrap any plans that would lead to demolition as outlined by the Bedworth transforming plans and the drawings that went to the OSP? And will you apply for community ownership funding and hand the building over to a community group to get it off the council's books and to work with residents to get national money into Bedworth to allow residents to take on the ownership of the Civic Hall, ensuring the venue can continue in the town and the council is able to focus on its own finances? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Hardy. Councillor Markham, you wish to respond to both those points?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. And thank you, Mr Margrave and Ms Hardy, for your questions. Just because the Civic Hall has been approved as an asset of community value, it will not stop the process of the EOIs. The Council has approved a process and a timescale for the assessment of the submitted EOIs, and this ends on the 30th of January. And then February and March will be used to assess the submitted EOI forms, consider the next steps, and report back to Cabinet. Anyone interested in running the Civic Hall will still need to complete and submit an EOI within this timescale. There is guidance online of who you can contact to assist you or any other group. Officers will not be able to assist individual groups to secure funding. The process has to be fair to all, and neither them or this council can be seen to favour one application over another by assisting one group. I just want to clarify something, that when the council made the announcement regarding the Civic Hall, the recommendation was to not reopen at this time. Although, yes, there is a vision for Bedworth that was put forward, but at no time has this council said that it's being imminently demolished, so the rumours that it is soon to be knocked down for a car park or left as a pile of bricks simply isn't true.
Thank you, Councillor Markham. Moving on to question 4. Steve Young is with us this evening. Would you like to submit your question? You're not here? Okay. So that will be, he will receive a written response to that. Question 5, Ian Calvert.
Where has councillors Evans, Walsh, Morton, Coventry, Morton and Singh seen that Labour has stated that Labour has said that Civic Hall should should immediately reopen, as at the last council meeting the elected group of Labour councillors stated that they have not put any leaflets or statements out about Bedworth Civic Hall. Therefore, will these councillors explain where this money has come from for this extraordinary meeting? Will these councillors also be asking North Warwickshire and Bedworth Labour, who don't have any councillors, to attend a meeting and answer these questions directly?
Thank you, Mr Calvert. It is usual that the Cabinet member answers, but as it's been put to, in principle, Councillor Evans, would you wish to respond?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I thank Mr Calvert for his question. There's 3 parts to his question. I'll take those in turn. So the first question is, where have we effectively seen that Labour have said they will reopen the Civic Hall? 3 points to that question. A leaflet, as I understand it, was delivered to every property in Bedworth. I have the leaflet here, and it says, what are we demanding? 1, the Civic Hall must be reopened as soon as possible. In In addition to that, at the last full council meeting, when Mr Margrave submitted his petition to us, the Labour group asked that we, as a council, endorse all of the recommendations on that petition, and one of the recommendations was that the Civic Hall is reopened immediately. In addition, the final point I would make is that the Bedworth Labour Party has put a number of banners around the vicinity of the town centre, quote, "Save the Civic Hall." If you intend to save the Civic Hall, you probably don't intend to close it. The second part to your question, in terms of the funding for this extraordinary council meeting, an extraordinary council meeting was being called anyway to discuss the management restructure, so I envisage that the only cost to taxpayers will probably be half an hour's worth of utility bills. The final point to your question, will these councillors also be asking North Warwickshire and Bedworth Labour, who don't have any councillors, to attend a meeting and answer these questions? With respect, it's not really my job as a Conservative councillor to ask Labour members to attend meetings. Of course, if they wish to attend and speak, they're always more than welcome, and I'd love to hear their views.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Thank you, Mr Calvert, for the question. Moving on, we now have a notice of motion. Bedworth Civic Hall and spending commitments made by the Labour group. I think, again, is that back to you, Councillor Evans, to move that motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wish to move the motion standing in my name on the order paper that the Leader of the Opposition presents the Labour group's funding model on reopening the Bedworth Civic Hall within 10 working days. Now, I don't want to rehash the arguments behind this debate. Yes, residents are upset, angry and disappointed. And as a resident of the town, I can absolutely sympathise and understand the frustrations behind the decision. But to be clear, this side of the chamber is not prepared to subsidise the Civic Hall to the tune of £800,000 a year to keep it afloat. Residents voted for Conservative councillors because they wanted us to spend their taxes efficiently and be prepared to take difficult decisions in the long-term financial interest of the council. Any business that loses £800,000 a year wouldn't be bailed out by the banks, so why should the people of Nuneaton, Bedworth and Bulkington? Moving on to the motion before us tonight. It is no secret in the town that the Labour Party has now adopted a policy of reopening the Civic Hall. Labour councillors at the last full council tried to dismiss this, but the evidence is clear. A leaflet was delivered to the town here, and I've given copies on the Labour benches, stating that the Civic Hall should be reopened as soon as possible. At the last full council, members of the Labour group supported a petition that would seek to change council policy to reopen the Civic Hall. And members of the Bedworth Labour Party have been placing banners around the town with a Labour logo stating that the Civic Hall should be saved. You wouldn't argue for an asset to be saved if actually you intended to close it. So we know this is their policy, and presumably would be the policy they intend to implement if there was a Labour administration following the next elections. The purpose of opposition is to provide critical scrutiny to policies enacted by the administration. It is their job to challenge the controlling group and effectively to bring us down. And in the case where the opposition vehemently disagrees with a financial decision made by the controlling group, it is their responsibility to put forward alternative funding models to maintain credibility amongst the electorate. Indeed, this was continuously done by Councillor Wilson when this side of the chamber was in the opposition in policies such as the green bin tax. However, despite an overwhelming number of prompts, the Labour group very simply won't tell the public what spending decisions they will take to keep the Civic Hall open. Indeed, at the last two full council meetings, I have said to the opposition that I would happily support a procedural motion to adjourn the meeting, giving time for the Labour group to come back to council to present their alternative funding model. Yet, they decided against doing this. Now, my residents in the Slough ward have contacted me over recent weeks confused Whether they agree or disagree with the decision that's been taken by my group, quite frankly, they don't understand why it is that Labour councillors won't present their alternative funding model on how the Civic Hall will be kept open. Equally, it seems that Bedworth Labour members are taking a completely different policy to members of the benches sitting opposite. And people want to know, what is their policy? Now, when challenged at the last full council meeting about the leaflet circulated across Bedworth, Councillor Shires said, and I quote, "As it says on that leaflet, it was Bedworth Labour Party. That is not us. That is them funded through North Warwickshire Labour Party, and it's not through the Nuneaton Labour Party. We have not authorised it." Yet, when a member of the public rightfully asked the question on the Bedworth Community Forum on Labour's position on reopening the Civic Hall, the chairman of the Bedworth Labour Party responded by saying, and I quote, "I do know that the Labour group is somewhat supportive." Sorry, I've misquoted. Let me start that again. I do know that the Labour group is supportive of what Bedworth Labour Party has been saying. Now, I don't wish to question Councillor Shires, because quite frankly, I think she's probably telling the truth, and I know she has a good character. Yet even those who are most critical of this administration must accept this only adds to residents' confusion if two parts of the Labour Party are taking two different policy approaches. I've already highlighted why it is that opposition should tell residents how they intend to fund the reopening of the Civic Hall, but there's another dimension to this argument as well. The council last year opened its expression of interest procedure for potential businesses and community groups that wish to take on the running of the Civic Hall. And personally, I'm only aware of one group that is likely to submit an expression of interest form. And I will finish my speech in the summing up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Is there a seconder for that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second that proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. So that moves us on to the debate. Is there any member wishing to speak on the proposal? Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You can probably remember a few weeks ago that we gave you the chance, after calling this decision in, we gave you a chance to meet with the interested parties in Bedworth to discuss different things on how they intended to go. That was voted down by the Conservatives, and so that could go no further with any interested parties. Just speaking on the motion tonight, Mr. Mayor, that will I provide the council with a funding model? The answer is no, I won't. Thank you.
Councillor Watkins, thank you. Any other member? Councillor Condacore.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're not actually making things better by having these disputes of you present your case, you present your case. What we should be doing is working with the community group to work out how we can get the money to get the Civic Hall open at no significant cost to the council taxpayer. Because as it has already been said many times, this council is in significant financial difficulties. It is very rich of Councillor Evans to moan about Labour's leaflets when Councillor Evans himself in this chamber said we're not closing the Civic Hall. When Councillor Evans and his colleagues...
I'll hear that explanation after the speaker is finished.
When Councillor Evans and his colleagues at elections said we're not closing the Civic Hall. And also, quite a key thing is, it's usually the administration that runs the council that should be presenting business cases that sound and add up. And you failed to do the business case for closing, demolishing and refurbishing or regenerating that part of Bedworth. Transforming Bedworth is totally uncosted, unfunded and unfundable. You failed to provide a valid adding up business case for the leisure centre that has now been paused because you tried to build a £36 million leisure centre with only £15 million of cash.
I will hear the point of order following the conclusion, but I'm just going to actually bring Councillor Condacore back to the motion that's before us this evening, Councillor.
We are asking Labour to produce a business case, and yet we haven't had valid business cases for all the Conservatives' projects, transforming the Nuneaton projects. The hotel, we haven't seen a recent business case. The Bridge to Living scheme, no valid business case. So I would normally amend this motion that was proposed to actually ask the Conservative group within 10 days also to produce a worked business case for their projects. And we are in a council that should be making things better. And this £800,000 that was quoted by Councillor Evans for the cost of running this Civic Hall, that is the cost of the council, including all the recharges. The cost of keeping the Civic Hall closed would still be all those capital recharges. So you've got 250,000, plus all the costs of maintaining the building. You've got to find that money that was a capital charge from somewhere. £800,000 was mentioned by Councillor Evans in bringing this up, so I think it is relevant.
Being very lenient, but try and keep to the motion as proposed. But yes, you're right, the £800,000 was mentioned.
The £800,000 was mentioned. That includes, there will be a cost of keeping it closed. And that cost of keeping it closed could be a cost of saving it. So if the cost of not opening the Civic Hall, including all the heating and all that, is 50,000 or whatever, that is at least a start towards funding the community group in actually having a future for the Civic Hall. My policy, and you can ask me to work it out later in 10 days, would be to actually let the community run the Civic Hall, because then it doesn't cost 800,000. It would cost the council maybe 1 or 2 or 300,000. It's got to be an awful lot cheaper, the community running the Civic Hall. And we can find that money. We can charge for the car park behind the Civic Hall. We can actually use some of the Civic Hall rooms. We can let either the group rent rooms out for arts groups or whatever and generate income, or even have part of it as a gymnasium. Now we can't build this gymnasium in the park with 120 gym machines. We can actually have some of those in the Civic Hall, generating money for the community group to actually subsidise running the theatre. So I think the Conservative group should be presenting their business case and helping the community with any funding.
Thank you, Councillor Condacore. I've got, first of all, Councillor Evans, you wanted to raise a point of personal explanation.
The point that Councillor Condacore made in his speech, he may recall during the coronavirus pandemic that he went to social media on a number of occasions, and you'll understand why I'm making this point in a minute, Mr. Mayor, about our vaccination efforts in the borough. Now, yes, I did make a statement that the Civic Hall was not closing as a vaccination centre. That is what I said, because of your mistruths on social media, which cause unease amongst the NHS workers locally.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Wilson, you've got a point of order you wanted to raise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My point of order, although it now seems quite irrelevant, is that most of what Councillor Condacore said was not actually speaking to the motion, which is asking the Labour Party, as the official opposition, to put forward an alternative proposal for funding the Civic Hall.
I think you're quite correct in what you've just said, Councillor Wilson, and we've already been given the answer from Councillor Watkins in relation to that. I have other speakers. Councillor Tremans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think to deal with the speaker we've just had first, I'm delighted. We now have on record the member who's just spoken saying that he's going to bring forward his plan within 10 days to run the Civic Hall. Well, that's great. I'm sure officers look forward to receiving within 10 days, which is before the deadline that Councillor Markham outlined, your formal proposal, and that will be considered along with all the other formal proposals that have come in. And you'll have the opportunity to put your efforts where your mouth is and to make that formal submission. And I wish any and all groups every success with their bids to put that forward. So, it's on the video, so you can't take it back. And we all look forward to you finally living up to something. The other point I wanted to make about the whole, oh, it's all unfunded, it's all uncosted by our group is clearly you attend meetings but don't see any or hear anything. Because every single one of these projects has been through to Cabinet and the Council, and we voted on them, had the appropriate papers, and it has followed due process. But what we're talking about tonight is about repeated claims from the opposition of how they will fund how they will keep the Civic Hall open. And what we're saying to them tonight is, you have an opportunity. We caught you out last time when, before the election, you said you'd got all the funding in place to take the leisure centre to the next stage. And when we took control, we realised the money wasn't there. And when you were asked, you had no idea how it was going to be raised. This time, we're again saying, OK, if you can keep the Civic Hall open, what are you going to cut to come up with the 800,000 to enable that to happen? Putting banners up all over Bedworth, leaflets to every home there. What is Labour's answer? You don't want to say. I think public can only construe from that you can't say, or don't want to, because the cuts would be so swathing, so painful for all the other services. We only spend about 16 million a year in this council. To take nearly £1 million out of what's already being spent, just so you can subsidise the Civic Hall. No wonder you don't want to say, or can't. But either way, you shouldn't be making the claims that you are. Simple as that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tremans. Councillor Condacor, you raised a point of personal explanation. That's obviously in relation to something that you said.
Yeah, yes, I said I would work out how we would fund the community group and help the community group run the Civic Hall. I wasn't going to put my own bid in to run it myself. We've got a lot of wonderful people who are going to run it. I was going to suggest how we could raise some money to help them. Thank you.
Thank you for that point of explanation. I think it was useful to ensure that members are understanding that what you're proposing is helping the group to find the finances, not to fund it yourself. Thank you. I've now got Councillor Wilson who's indicating.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Well, what have we heard tonight? A complete abdication of responsibility from the Leader of the Opposition. He claims £2,500 a year to be Leader of the Opposition as the SRA. I used to get it. I did an awful lot of work for it, Mr. Mayor, as members on this side of the chamber will know. It seems, Mr. Mayor, that given the fact that he has no alternative proposals whatsoever that are fully costed and realistic, he is abdicating all sense of responsibility and indeed all sense of reality, because his colleagues in Bedworth are going around saying, we're going to reopen it, we're going to open it now, let's get it done. And his colleagues, and I do apologise for not being here at the last council meeting, Mr. Mayor, I was down with a chest infection, but apparently they put forward an amendment to actually go ahead with the petition as put forward. Thank you, Councillor Evans. What are we going to have if they do take control, Mr. Mayor? A leader of Nuneaton Bedworth and a leader of Nuneaton Labour and a leader of Bedworth Labour. I know that Councillor Watkins goes around trying to call himself Mr. Nuneaton. He's no more Mr. Nuneaton than I am Mr. Motivator, Mr. Mayor. But the reality is, if you are going to be leading this authority, you lead it as Nuneaton, Bedworth and Bulkington, not Nuneaton versus Bedworth. And I think the residents of Bedworth can actually see through that, because he has no plan. At least when we took control of this authority back in 2021, we had a plan which was voted for by residents. You might not agree with it, but there was a plan, and you could hold us to account on that plan. Now, Councillor Condacor said that the cost of reopening, or to that effect, could be something to do with assisting the community groups. The reality is that leaving it unopened, as it has been for the past 2.5, almost 3 years, is still cheaper than the cost of it opening as it was before COVID. It was costing us between £800,000 and £850,000 then. The report which went before scrutiny quite clearly said that over the coming years, it is likely to top 950, heading towards £1 million. As we already know, this country is facing an inflationary crisis, which is hitting materials, the supply chain, and importantly for us as an authority, employment costs. Where does Councillor Condacor and the Labour group believe that those funds are going to come from? Thin air, Mr. Mayor? Absolutely not. We have to set a balanced budget. Unlike the central government, we do not have powers of borrowing. We cannot just go to Mr. Biggs down at the Barclays Bank and say, I want to keep the Civic Hall open for another year, give me £800,000. Where's your business case? I haven't got one. How much do you make? Well, I still lose £800,000 after every single penny I've taken in. If that was you or I, Mr. Mayor, or any other business across this borough, that bank manager would be doing their job and saying, no, Mr. Mayor. And as an authority, we have the responsibility to ensure we get best value for money and that we protect the most needed services in this authority, services which are used as a universal service by many residents across this borough. Now, Councillor Condacor seemed to intimate, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, that we should just hand it over to Mr. Margrave and co. And I think this is at the crux, actually, of Councillor Markham's reply. We don't know that Mr. Margrave's company and friends can actually run that business. We need to know. We need to know where they're getting their money from. We need to know how they're going to pay the bills. Because if it all goes wrong, and I sincerely hope it doesn't, to whoever takes it on, whether it's Bedworth CIC or anyone else, it then reverts back to us as an authority. And then we end up back at square one. Now, if the Bedworth CIC is the best one and is evaluated as being the best one, great. Good luck to them, and I wish you every success. But we would not be being responsible if we just handed it over to you without doing that critical challenge. If someone else comes along and they score better and can actually deliver a better service, surely, as residents of Bedworth, you would want them and say, good luck to you. If you can do it better than me, crack on. Great, because it means that we do have the Civic Hall going. And it would be a win-win situation because the council isn't on the hook for the £800,000 and the residents still get their Civic Hall, if it can be afforded. Now, that is the responsible thing to do, Mr. Mayor. And that is what we have done. But there is absolutely no sense of responsibility from the party opposite, and they deserve to be held to account because they are proposing to be an alternative administration and they are claiming money to actually hold us to account. And in either case, they've done neither.
Please sum up. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Damon Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we can all see what's happening here. We've got Nuneaton and Bedworth and Bulkington. When we put budgets together, whether in opposition or now in power, we talk to each other about what we want. So when we wanted to put Bedworth Market back in the street, which is what people wanted, they told us, we had to make a business case amongst ourselves before we could put it in the budget. Otherwise, we couldn't put together a responsible, costed budget. We've had a situation where for decades the Civic Hall's been mismanaged to a point where it's losing money hand over fist. We've reached a position now where control of the council's changed and hard decisions are having to be made about whether or not we can reopen it. We've got now a situation in Bedworth where the Bedworth Labour Party has seen an opportunity. Having mismanaged the place for decades, they say, oh, the Tories have had to make an unpopular decision. Let's jump on this bandwagon that's coming along and let's see if we'll claim we can reopen it. We don't know how we're going to do it. We haven't talked to our colleagues in Nuneaton to see if it's possible. But we'll do this because it's a guaranteed vote winner. Unfortunately, you people over there, you weren't aware of it. And when it came to the motion at the last council meeting, we had literally a back of a fag packet amendment that says we will endorse or we accept the findings of the petition, which asked for the Civic Hall to be immediately reopened. Right? So all of a sudden, you were challenged with the prospect of finding £1 million overnight. You can't do it. We've now asked you to come to the council tonight and explain to us how, if you're going to do what Bedworth Labour want you to do, how you're going to do it. You've quite clearly told us you're not going to. So it's a case of, like Jerry Maguire said, show us the money or fess up and admit that you can't do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Not seeing any other indicate. Sorry, Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in reference to what you said, actually, yeah, that motion or the amendment to our motion would have cost us £1 million had we accepted it and left the room. So it is only right that if you are putting those things into the council chamber and putting the responsibility of the taxpayer to pick up the tab, that you tell the taxpayer how they are expected to do it. And the EOIs, we can't interfere with the process of EOIs. We can't favour one or the other. That was made very clear by Sue. The process is in flight. It's not like we can just scrap it and say, sorry about that, we're changing the goalpost now, because that's not how it works. We have to follow the due process, as Rob said. This is the first steps to actually regenerating Bedworth with the transforming Bedworth. Now, the accusation is that it's not funded. Well, no, nothing's ever funded in the first instance. It's not like you can go out to market with nothing and just say, we want to regenerate, and then the answer would be, well, where's your business case? The answer to everything when you need to get funding, either publicly or privately, is where's your business case? If you have no business case, or you have no example of how you are going to achieve the outcomes you claim you are going to achieve, no one is going to give you a penny. And that is across the board. So one of the other aspects is where is your business case for charging the taxpayer to keep the Bedworth Civic Hall open? We're not seeing it. There is an opportunity as part of the budget process, which you can be held to account on publicly, that if you have got the funding in the budget process, then we'd love to see it. However, the last budget process that we went through, that wasn't actually forthcoming either, was it? I think there was an amendment to our budget that took the Jubilee money out, but I'm going off topic now. The amendment to our motion at the last full council, where we accepted the petition and noted the position, and the Labour amendment would have actually called for us to immediately open the Civic Hall. That doesn't reflect just on Bedworth residents either. That's a cost to the entire borough. So again, it's not just Bedworth centric, and I made that clear at the last full council. This is actually not a divided borough. As much as people would like it to be, and as much as people try and propagate that theory, this is Nuneaton and Bedworth and Bulkington. So we are one borough, and the majority of the taxpayers in this borough are not in Bedworth. So when we are looking at this logically, you have a responsibility in this council to tell everybody, not just people in Bedworth, how this is going to be funded. And it's clear that that's not happening. And I'm sorry to have to say, but your colleagues in Bedworth, North Warwickshire, have really stuffed you up on this, because they are not the ones in this chamber who are going to have to put the money where their mouth is. You're going to have to put the money where their mouth is. And we're just waiting for you to do that, as is the rest of the borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. I've now got Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given the controlling party's concern for fiscal prudence, could they clarify just how far over budget they already are on the Bedworth Leisure Centre? Thank you.
I'm going to say I don't think that's part of the proposed motion, to be honest with you, Councillor Wright. And also, it's not questions to Cabinet members at this point. I've got Councillor Hammersley. Yes, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I started up business in Bedworth over 25 years ago, and I needed funds for that business, so I had to present my case for my business and a business plan to the bank manager, which he looked at and studied to see if I was worthy of being lent this money. he chose and he put his faith in me to lend me the funds to get going. But in return, he wanted my belt, my braces, my toe detectors, and the keys to my house, which I gave him everything. So I had to make that business work. I wish these people from Bedworth, and I'm a Bedworth, and I'm known in Bedworth by these people, all the best. Come up with a business study and a business case that you can make this civic hall work. Please give your expression of interest, and it will be studied and marked along with others. Don't just say you can do it without producing figures. I would pat you on the back, shake your hand and say, well done, go ahead, I wish you well. Please present your case and do your expressions of interest. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hammersley. I'm not seeing any other indications. Sorry, Councillor Coventry-Morton.
Don't do this very often, but I do wish you all the luck. And just like Mr Hammersley's just said, we are Bede Ward councillors, and we just hope that something works out right for everybody. Okay.
Thank you. Right, I'm not seeing anyone else indicating, so I'll return to the seconder, which is Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do fully support the motion as presented by Councillor Evans, but I believe we've already received an answer from Councillor Watkins with regards to the response to this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I'll return to Councillor Evans as the mover of the motion. Do you wish to sum up? It's 5, I thought it was.
Yes.
You don't need to use them all, though.
I'll certainly try. So first point I want to make, and just what I had in my speech but didn't manage to finish off. One of the reasons why I think it's important that the opposition should come forward with their alternative funding model is because we've now launched the expression of interest procedure for potential business groups and community groups to take on the running of the Civic Hall. And I'm only aware of Bedworth CIC, and I join with Councillor Hammersley and Councillor Coventry-Morton. I wish you all the best, and if you put forward a sound business model, I'll back it all the way. But what I want to say is this. A lot of the people who make up this group do it in their spare time. They are essentially volunteers. So if they're being told that a future Labour administration, which could only be 18 months away, if they're being told that actually it's going to be reopened anyway, I suppose if I was them, I'd be asking, well, am I really using my time effectively at the moment? There's been a number of points about interested parties and giving support to interested parties. In an ideal world, it would be great. Yeah, we as a council would love to give support to Bedworth CIC. But in the UK, we have competition laws, we have procurement legislation. So when these expression of interest forms go in, if we decide to award it to one organisation and we've given support to that organisation and we don't award it to Bedworth CIC and they find out and they've had no support, well, they could rightfully submit a judicial review to the council and they'd probably have a very decent case of winning that. So that is why we can't take part in that process, because it would be a conflict of interest. Now, I'm not being funny, but I do believe it is only right. You know, people can disagree with the decision that's been taken by this side of the chamber, and I know that many people will. But if in 18 months' time there is a Labour council, residents are expecting that you're going to be reopening the Civic Hall. So I do believe that it's only right that you tell us how you intend to do that. Do you want to go to monthly bin collections? Do you want us to stop providing temporary accommodation? Do you want us to make mass redundancies across the council? These are, I'm afraid to say, the realities of the situation, and you can laugh, but you won't be laughing in 18 months' time when you're the one who has to set the budget, Councillor Watkins. So with no business case, no funding model, no way can the Labour group ever take control of this council ever again. Councillor Watkins has said he's not going to present it. I think that's incredibly disappointing, and I know that my own constituents will be disappointed with that decision, but quite frankly, I didn't really expect anything to come forward. So I would ask people to support this motion. We're giving them the opportunity, and I think it's important that we're on the record on how we vote on this item. So let's have a recorded vote, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. There will be a recorded vote. There's enough people stood up for that call on recorded vote. I take it you concluded there. Thank you. As you'd sat down, thank you. We will take a recorded vote on this, and the Chief Executive will now read out the names.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If each councillor could indicate whether they are for the motion, against the motion, or wish to abstain. Councillor Baxter-Payne. Councillor Beetham. Councillor Brown. Councillor Cape. Councillor Clark. Councillor Coventry-Morton. Councillor Croft. Councillor Evans. Councillor Golby. Councillor Green. Councillor Guttridge. Councillor Hammersley. Councillor Harbison. Councillor Hartshorn. Councillor Kenna. Councillor Condacor. Councillor Markham. Councillor Morton. Councillor Pandare. Councillor Jill Shepherd. Councillor Shires. Councillor Singh. Councillor Smith. Councillor M. Tromans. Councillor R. Tromans. Councillor Walsh. Councillor Watkins. Councillor Wilson. And Councillor Wright.
That motion is carried. There are no other items on the agenda. So I thank you all for your attendance. Thank you for your input. Is closed. If you could stop the live streaming, please. Thank you.